So what would be the potential operating cost be if it was combined with K-8 versus two separate facilities? The cost savings to do a combined K-8 would be negligible because of the number of students we have and the square footage required. Because what we're looking at is two full schools, a full elementary school at capacity and a full middle school. There would be cost savings if these two schools had about half the number of students they currently do. Then we would need less square footage. But at this point, we would need a gym for each, for elementary, for middle, a cafeteria. They can't share that. They can't share some of the teaching spaces like art classrooms, music classrooms, even media centers would be an issue. So again, K-8 savings really come into play when you have a scenario where you have a building or you have two buildings and neither building is being used at capacity. Then you can take one of the buildings off the table, put everybody into one building, and see those operational savings.
And Ms. McCabe, I think that's the concept that people are having the most trouble with, right? Because the way we had always talked about the K-8 in the past has been that, well, it's a more efficient operation, but I think that it gets convoluted, right? When you talk about a one-for-one replacement, I think the K-8, it seems like from all the information that we've seen, the K-8 works better in small communities.
Correct.
Where you've got the same exact population of students going all the way through, right?
Yes.
So your K-5, you know, your fifth graders that move
it's a clean feeder.
Is still the same sixth graders. You don't have another school feeding into that.
No, it's almost like its own closed system.
Right.
There.
And so it's more of a smaller, very rural setting type of situation where you could get the efficiencies from, you could have a shared cafeteria, you could have shared gym space, you could have shared different shared spaces.
Oftentimes you see it in rural areas or in urban areas. You'll see Baltimore City has done that in many locations because they didn't have a full elementary school or a full middle school in the same neighborhood, and they were spending money to run both facilities. So what they did was close one of the facilities and put all of the students K through 8 in one of those buildings to have cost savings.
So along those lines, and you could potentially save on administrative staff as well, right? Like you wouldn't, I mean, if it's a much smaller population,
if it's a much smaller,
you wouldn't need
correct.
2 principals, you wouldn't need 2 APs, some savings there as well.
Right.
But is there any merit to talking about this project from that perspective, that it would be on a smaller scale and it would be a one-to-one feeder?
I mean, I think we could talk about it, but I don't think it would solve a lot of the problems that we're faced with right now.
One of the difficulties you face right now is that if you look at that flow chart of where our schools feed in, our middle schools are fed by multiple elementaries. So we would really have to reduce it down to, as Ms. McCabe said, a clean feeder, and then in that clean feeder, we'd have to account for the other kids and where they go. So it would be very difficult at this time.
Right, and that, I guess I'm thinking about it from the perspective of the questions that we've asked in the past. We say, can we just close east and redistrict? And we say, well, that doesn't work because there's not enough capacity in the system at the middle school level to make that work. But if you added back in some capacity but not a full amount of the capacity at the middle school, is that something that, and still have to redistrict some, is that a viable option, right? Because we've been trying to push the discussion towards, you know, like, okay, we're not talking necessarily about a one-for-one replacement in that scenario, right? If we were talking about doing a true K-8 where the elementary just feeds into the middle school, that would mean a smaller middle school. So we'd be talking maybe a 300 kid facility for middle school. Then that would still leave enough capacity at the middle school level in the rest of the county to absorb the rest of the kids, right? And I'm not saying that that's where we would go, definitely, but it's one of the things that I think we've always kind of brought up as something that we'd want to consider.
You would still be moving quite a few students outside of the Westminster area, longer bus rides. Our middle schools now are near capacity, so even moving an additional 350, 400 students, the difference between the smaller K-8 and what you would need for a full middle school, you'd be well over capacity at the other remaining middle schools and much longer bus rides for many students.
The scenario that could create very quickly is a middle school that's over capacity, and we need to look at how to relieve that issue again. Is that another building? So that may be a temporary fix. I don't know that with the size of the present middle schools that would be a viable long-term fix, because we really do need the size and the capacity of the number of seats that we have at middle school right now to meet the present need. If we grow, we're able to handle some of that growth, but if we reduce, we'd have another problem. We just have our overcrowding in a different place.
Right, and I'm not suggesting that that's a desirable option at all. I'm simply saying that that's kind of more of what the K-8 scenario is meant to be.
It's a
And
smaller
so
school and
just
a
trying to
kindergarten.
help people understand the difference between what we're proposing as a potential K-8 isn't really what a K-8 is meant to be, or where that scenario works the best.
Right.
Right.
So,